Hi everyone, my name is Nicolette Gooding. I am a Master's of Social Work student currently completing my practicum with For a Safer Space. Today I will be discussing self-care and sharing information for those in the Indigenous, Black, and Asian communities and how remaining mindful of intersectional identities affects our daily interactions and also our lives and how we make hope in the world. In the last decade, we've seen that wellness and self-care industries have began to blossom in popularity, and every day people decide to create spaces and rituals for themselves to heal, realizing that self-care is more than just dignity, than actually being about extravagance. And for Indigenous, Black, and Asian communities, the creation of healing processes and transformative spaces has traditionally been a source of power and necessity for their own protection, especially in the face of violence, colonialism, and fear. As the American writer, feminist, and civil rights activist Audre Lorde once said, caring for myself is not self indulgence, it is self preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. When we think of wellness, the image that often comes to our mind is a room full of Zen minded women breathing in to their dawn with dog, a vision of relaxation, personal care. And historically, Indigenous, Black, and Asian communities cannot imagine themselves in these spaces because they were simply not available to them. For these communities, surviving was a priority, and psychology today explains how psychologists have researched and put forward that healthy human beings have a certain number of needs, and that these needs can be arranged in a hierarchy with some needs such as psychological safety and psychological needs being more primitive or basic than others, such as social and ego needs. Broadly speaking, accessing food, shelter, and for protection for those in Black, Indigenous, and Asian communities and their families has long since been a priority, while unfortunately mental wellness has took second place. By design, Black and Indigenous women are the people that have had to focus most on their basic needs, leaving very little room for conventional care. To this day, many Indigenous, Black, and Asian communities feel that the wellness industry is for affluent and white folks. In some ways, they're right because if we look closer, however, we can see how communities from Indigenous, Black, and Asian backgrounds have actually created their own forms of self care, where traditionally spirituality and synonymous with wellness. And according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, historically, a connection to a higher power has been the cornerstone of resilience and empowerment that has sustained generations of individuals from those of African descent. And through rituals, holistic teachings, and art, communities of Asian, Indigenous, and Black backgrounds have discovered multiple ways of pathways for restoration. One example of this is music. Across all Indigenous cultures, music has been used as an expressive form of spirituality. And from African descent as well, spirituals in the American South, to calypso in the Caribbean, to the chanting of First Nations communities. Singing words of love, healing, and belief in themselves while facing a world of oppression was considered an act of radical power felt through the lived experiences across multiple generations. Anyone looking to make a change in the world has to care for themselves. Engaging in self care means that we can incorporate into our own work as activists ways of acknowledging and hopefully moving beyond trauma. Self care has activated individuals as a topic that is coming to light more and more in today's social climate, especially with events such as Black Lives Matter, combating anti Asian support rallies, and marches for Indigenous land. Marching from sunup to sundown has caused many revolutionaries to experience mental and physical burnout, albeit deeply inspired by the power of now. Black Panther leader Erica Huggins, for example, taught yoga and meditation as an effective therapeutic tool to fellow Panthers Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. Self care works like air travel. When we travel by air, we must always put on our oxygen mask before helping others. Self care is for everyone. With yoga classes, meditation, and nourishing recipes available online more now than ever, we all have access to affordable healing at home. However, access doesn't always mean that everyone feels embraced. As mentioned before, self care and wellness spaces have long felt exclusionary for Indigenous, Black, and Asian communities. Just because the door is open doesn't mean the door is ready to be walked through. So, in Canada, the First Nations Health Authority is governed by and serves BC's First Nations individuals and communities. They provide incredible mental health resources, nursing services, and traditional healing practices. Speaking to the importance of wellness in their holistic healing, the FHNA was founded on the belief that an integral focus of First Nations healing and wellness is through the balance and interrelationships of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being. Similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, its multifaceted model, created from BC's First Nations communities' ideas and feedback, is governed by the logic that you cannot achieve the harmonious balance of one tier, wisdom, responsibility, and respect, without the needs of a higher tier being met first, such as your emotional, mental, and spiritual balances. Self care comes in many forms, whether it be getting an 8 hour day of sleep, going for a run, or simply taking an hour to focus inward and breathe. No matter where you're from or what you do, everybody requires time and space for themselves. The space that we take can help us to be more connected with our inner selves, and it is an act of kindness that should be neither radical nor regulated by any other human. As we evolve from a version of self care that is an exclusive practice to one that is of inclusion and celebration, so too does one shift our perspective on self worth and also our view of the world. It is important to remember that humankind is intricately linked, and we cannot move forward on a collective level without putting the mental health and well being of individuals first. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was helpful, and take care.